Good morning, Code Bakers. In the last video, we had George walking around his new town. Today, we're going to start using Tiled, a free open source map editor. As a demo map from LimeZu is very nice and complex, we're going to leave it in for now at this stage of the game making. We'll just use Tiled for the collision. We're going to continue to use Tiled as part of this tutorial series. So even though the initial usage as to when he collides with a friend to indicate it, it's still a good time to install Tiled if you don't already have it. So you can go to itch.io and either just download it with saying no thanks for the payment, or if you have some cash, you could basically donate or support his project. But it's not necessary for the tutorial. You're going to want to click on New Map. The map that we'll be creating, it's going to initially be from the static image. And we're using the demo from LimeZu's Serene Village Revamped Updated. So you should have previously downloaded this in the previous video. So when you have the pack, there's that on this web page, there's this image, which we downloaded and saved as a PNG. At this stage, we're currently using this static background.png. So it's just one image without any removable tiles or objects on that image. There's no interaction with the background image at this point. So I'm right-clicking and getting the dimensions, the width and height of the static background image. The tiles that I'm going to use in the future are going to be 16 by 16. So to calculate the number of tiles, I'm going to divide the width of the image by 16. So that's 88 tiles. Each tile is 16 pixels wide by 16 pixels high. So since the height of the entire image is 800, there's going to be 50 tiles. So even though I'm just importing the entire image, I'm going to eventually change it and use a map editor on it for this type of tiles. We'll build it in the future. But to get started and just focus on the collision portion, I'm going to set the width and height to the same as a static map. So that's how I got the 88 tiles wide by 50 tiles high. So I imported the actual tile sheet. That's what you saw in the previous image, but we're not going to use it. That's just to quickly show you what we'll do in the future. We're just going to take the actual image and drag and drop it into this new tile set. On the right-hand pane, I have the tile set tab selected. I'm going to drag and drop the image, the background image, onto this thing that says new tile set. And then there's this separate window that pops open that we can then just select the default values. If this doesn't work, you just select new tile set and then browse for this entire image here. Okay, this is just a temporary step until we're going to go back to Tile D in future videos and then build our own map. But I'm going to select the upper left-hand corner and then use Shift and then select the lower right-hand corner of this tile set, which is just a single image. That I'm going to line up the upper left edge with the upper left edge of the map. And then I'm going to stamp it down. In the lower right-hand side, you can adjust the scale of it. Maybe we want to make it a little bit larger because I think we're going to start dealing with the individual characters on the screen. The basic plot of the story is that George has moved into a new town. Go to the Layers tab and change the name of the map layer that you just added to maybe static_map. Add a new objects layer. Layers tab selected, go to the far left and click on the icon for new layer. Then select the pink object layer. So this is a different layer than the tile layer. I'm going to call this layer Friends with a capital F. For the collision detection, we're actually going to draw the things to collide on. I increased the scale. You might want to do it to at least 100%, perhaps even bigger. With the friends layer selected, I'm selecting the draw rectangle, then select the adjustment over to the left, and then this arrows will pop open. You'll now be able to adjust the size and position of that rectangle so that it matches the character that we're going to collide with. Repeat the process for the second character. First, select the rectangle drawing box. Then drop the rectangle over that second character under the house with the blue roof. And then go back to the tool to adjust the size of the box that we're going to use for the collision. At this stage, we're done with the map editing for this test. This is just a temporary map. If you go to the objects on the lower right-hand pane, you can see that we only have these two objects that we're going to use for collision. So let's save the map. I'm going to call it map.tmx. I'm going to save the map in the assets/tiles folder. It's a new folder of the actual project. So my project is called George, and under assets, I created a new folder for tiles. And it's in that tiles folder that I'm going to store the map.tmx file. You could call it anything, but if you want to be consistent, maybe just call it map. It might be easier to follow the tutorial. Okay, we're done with the tiled map editor, the open source map editor for this tutorial, but at least we're going to try to get the map loaded into our game. The map is currently embedded into this map.tmx file, and it's looking for the sprite sheet. The sprite sheet and the map are basically the same thing at this point. But I think it's good practice, so when we get to the next stage, you have a little bit of familiarity with tiled and this map format. Open up the map.tmx file and change the location of the background.png. It's the same file we used in the previous video. The location is /images. If you scroll down to the bottom of the map.tmx file, you'll see this object group with the name of friends, and there's only two objects in here. This is actually the main thing that we're going to be using for the collision detection. To load the map, we're going to use a separate package called flame_tiled. So run flutter pub add flame_tiled. This will automatically load the newest version of flame_tiled into your pubspec.yaml file. So at this time it's 1.2.1. At some point you also will need to add the assets. So assets/tiles into your pubspec.yaml. We can also take care of that in the future. We're now going to load the map in the onload method of the FlameGame. So there's some new commands or new classes that we'll have to use when we import the map from tiled. The previous way we got the map on was by making a Sprite component, but that doesn't have easy interactivity. So we're going to try to move this over from the background sprite into a map. So let's call it final home map. Await tiled component is new. So this is from the flame tiled, and then we're going to load the map file and specify the size of each tile, which will be more important in the future. But if you recall, each tile is 16 by 16 pixels because we're using that beautiful tile set from LimeZu. Since we'll be transitioning to loading the map and the objects on the map from tiled, from this tile file, we're going to comment out the add background, which was a sprite component. Initially, we'll have almost the same functionality, but this will be the thing the way that we do it going forward. So we're going to add this home map. This is also a good stage or a good step to test to make sure that we can load the map files, the TMX file, and the tile set. So add it to the puspec.yaml file, assets/tiles. I'm going to add the specific file. You could just add the directory. Either way is fine. I'm going to run it now and to see whether everything loads up. It should be the same as prior to doing this step, but we can then move on to try to eliminate the sprite component. So at this stage, this is primarily a learning experience on how to use tiled and how to load the map from tiled so that in the future we can access more features of tiled and the map layering system. And yeah, George is exploring the town and he's looking good. So everything is looking really good right now. Just to show you what happens, if I comment out the adding the home map, George should be on a black background and George is black. George is still moving around. So this concept, this map right now is just a layer. And we can add different objects from the map in layers in the future. Our objective for this tutorial, this video, is just to add the 2 objects for George's friends because he's trying to make friends in the new town. And at the current time, there's only 2 friends that's available on the map. So we'll make the game more complex in the future, but I think it's good to start off with just these 2 friends. I'm going to comment out the sprite component for the background and then move all the properties that were previously coming from the sprite component background to this new map. So for convenience, we'll create variables or variables for the map width and the map height. So this will be the entire map, the entire virtual world, which spans beyond the edges of the screen. And let's comment out for now the loading the background as a sprite component so that we can see where we need to change. So that one is the rectangle of the world's bounds that the camera is following George. And we'll insert the new width, the map width and the map height. So we're using the same map. So the size of his virtual world is going to be exactly the same. It's just we're getting the information instead of from the sprite component from the map. And this is to prevent George from leaving the virtual world. Okay, let's run it again and make sure that, oh, there's an error. Map width has not been initialized. Aha. Okay, so let's go back into the onLoad method. And at some point after we load the map, so we've already loaded this home map and we have all the information in home map, then we can set the values for map width and map height. This is just for convenience. There might be actually an easier property or easier way to get this, but couldn't figure it out. So I'm just creating a variable, and so that map.width is actually the width is the number of tiles. That's why I'm multiplying it by 16. So this home map.tilemap.map.height is the height of the map in tiles. And thus I have to multiply it by the height of each tile to get the height in pixels. This is the entire virtual world. So it's an entire village. I'm thinking of maybe calling it Happy Bay Village. We can add some water features to the village. So we won't be using the sprite component as the background image going forward. So we can now delete the background sprite. And we're going to be relying on the map that we created from tiled for the interaction and the building placement, other things going forward. Initially, it'd be quite simple, right? So we're just trying to have a collision with 2 friends. At this point in our game, all George needs to do to make a friend is to go up to the person and collide. He doesn't have to bring any fruit basket or baked goods. And there's no mean girls trying to interfere with George's integration into the community. So all we need to do is add a collision. So let's start off with the mixin on FlameGame, and we'll let the FlameGame know that there's going to be some collidables. So add that has collidables. If it doesn't come up or it's red, make sure you have all the imports in place. I think it's just in the components, but I'm not 100% sure. All right, so we're going to need a new class for George's friends. We'll call it friend component. So remember that this map right now is just this one giant image. So we can't actually remove the friend from the graphic right now at this stage. But we'll create a bounding box around the friend to indicate which we have the coordinates for the bounding box from tiled, right? These are the two objects, the friend objects that we created. So we'll create a friend component to extend the position component. And then we'll add this mixin for collidable or has hitbox and then collidable. We'll put a hitbox, which will be a simple rectangle, which is one of the simpler hitboxes you can add. You can make the hitbox more precise, right? Like if it's an oddly shaped tree or something, it doesn't necessarily have to be a rectangle, although the rectangle is one of the simpler hitboxes to make automatically. Flame does come with different types of hitboxes. We're just dealing with rectangles now because it's the easiest one to do. You may have to add the geometry flame/geometry.dart to get these hitboxes to come up. But at that point, for the constructor for the friend component, we can initialize it with this add hitbox right when the friend component is instantiated. We're also going to add another method here to detect when the hit has taken place. So when the collision, we just set it up for on collision end so that it's not constantly looping and constantly detecting a hit at this time. The other the friend is going to collide with will be George. So we'll also have to set up a hitbox and a collidable for George. At this stage, we're just going to have a some type of print statement in the debug console that George made a new friend, which is going to be the objective for the game. And George is going to reach his objective pretty easily at this stage of the game because there's no barriers. There's no mean girls. He doesn't have to get any baked goods, no cookies or cake or fruit basket. He doesn't have to find anything. He can just go straight to the friend, and he's going to make the new friend super easily at this stage. To add the mixin for the George, we'll add a new component, George component, which will extend the sprite animation component with the hitboxes and the collidable. So with both George and the friend has collidables and hitboxes, then we can detect the collision and at that point establish the new friendship in the new town, Happy Bay Village. Everything's happy. We haven't inserted the mean girls in yet. Now that we set up a new class for the George component, we're going to change the existing sprite animation component to the George component. So let's look for where we declared George. It should be close to the top of the onload method. And initially, at first, George was a sprite animation component, but now he's a George component with these new features for collidable. We instantiate George in the onload method. Make sure we instantiate the George component and not the sprite animation component. Everything else is going to be the same. I'm going to turn on these purple boxes to make it easier for us to debug. And also, I think it's more educational so you can see what is happening during the collision. So now George has a purple bounding box. There's actually light or some purple letter numbers there too. So you can actually see the position of the bounding box. It'll be easier to see if you comment out the add map, but maybe you can just see it right there as well. Either way, it's probably easier to see if it's just all black, right? So for testing purposes and just to check your collisions with the friends, you could enable and disable that add home map to see how he's doing. As you notice, he's walking around the bounding boxes, just following George around. So we next need to add this to the friends. George could potentially have hundreds of friends, although there's only 2 friends on the map right now. We may change this map in the future so that George has more objectives. Also, there's no baked goods or fruit baskets on the screen right now. However, even though there's only 2, we're going to set it up in a loop so that we can find all the friends on the map and set up the collision boxes for every single friend. So the way to do it is we have our map and we can grab the object layer that's called friends. So if you recall in the map.tmx file, this object group is called friends. So that's the connection point, is that friends is a string, and we're going to load everything from this object group layer, which we call it friends. So it's relatively straightforward, right? So now this friend group has all the objects that we specified in tiled. Because we dropped all the objects for the friends, we made all the bounding boxes in this friends object layer in tiled. So let's set up a for loop and go through every single friend. So there's a friend box. If you recall, the friend is not a sprite component. It's just a box at this point. So we're overlaying the box on top of the actual graphic. So it's for friend box and friend group.objects. Then we're going to instantiate a new friend component at the position that the friend box has, which this position is from the map.tmx file. And there's a friend box X and a friend box Y. This is specified, this coordinate is specified in that map.tmx. It was all automatically written to that file for you from tiled in the previous steps. We also know the width of the box, the friend box, and the height. So this friend component is going to be a position component with collidable with these properties, right? Position, width, height. And that's how we're going to create this bounding box around the friends. And we'll set the debug mode to true. It's maybe a lot of steps here, but it's highly scalable, right? So if we had 100 friends here, you can see that we could easily make 100. Okay, let's see if George can make some friends and have. Oh, George is making friends. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so he can make the same friend again and again, which is probably not what we want. We at least want to check just to make sure that he can at least make the friend only one time. But it's good to know that he can make friends, so he won't be that isolated in the new village, Happy Bay Village. And we don't know the friends' names yet either. Okay, so the first logic that we want to add is to make sure that George can only make that friend once, right? So if there's a count for the number of friends that George has made, we don't want him to make the same friend and count that as 2 different friends because it's the same friend, right? So we're going to remove the bounding box, the collision portions of it. Right, remove this. So the character is still going to be there. It's just the collision portion is going to be gone. We don't have the capability to remove that specific character right now. But as you can see, George can only make friends one time. It's not sad because I think this is just the way the world is, right? I mean, if there's one neighbor, you can only make friends within one time. So in the next video, we're going to add some additional behavior. Maybe there might be some sounds or some other interaction when George tries to make friends, and then there'll be some additional challenges, like maybe he'll have to find some baked goods or cookies or something to bring over to the neighbors. Okay, have a great day. Subscribe to the channel for updates on the more than 50 videos I've made on Flame. The videos with source code are also available for free on Teachable, 100% free course if this is a hobby. In whatever way you choose to learn, make sure you have fun and unleash your creativity. Have a fantastic day.